Hold up, let me ask you, what's the difference between vote or die Diddy and hold your vote Diddy? And what occurred between those two phases that made the change happen?
I went through the experience of politics. I played the game with the Democratic Party.
Now, unless you've been up under a rock, you probably have heard about the case going on with Sean P. Diddy Combs. The United States government, the Department of Justice, has brought the hammer down on Sean P. Diddy Combs, accused of SMEX trafficking, YouTube, singing for certain words, racketeering. He's got RICO charges against him, which is never good. He's actually looking at life, what I believe. And throughout this whole ordeal, people have been trying to figure out, how is it that somebody like him, for the last 30 years, can do some of the most tumultuous stuff to people and stay free and not go to prison and not get in trouble if everything that's coming out in court that's been alleged is true? People have thought it was the lawsuit against the liquor company Diageo, where it accused them of being racist against him. Some people said they didn't like that because that's old money, legacy brand. They brought the hammer down. Other people said that it was just all the women that he did wrong, and finally the evidence piled up, and that just made it happen. But people like him, like Bill Cosby, Weinstein, Epstein, none of these guys can make it throughout these industries as long as they have without help. And I was looking at a video recently by a guy he's a YouTuber named Poetic Flacco, and he highlighted something, and it made me go back and start doing some research. And in this video, I'm going to expose to you the actual root cause of why the hammer has been dropped on Sean P. Diddy Combs in a way like we haven't seen before. We've seen people have cases brought against them and whatnot, but never with this level of speed and veracity. I mean, this thing hit last year and we're already in court. It's almost over already. How does something like that flow through the justice system that fast when we all know nothing moves through the justice system that fast? And I found out. I'm going to take you through this little journey. Stay with me because I'm going to show you video proof of exactly what happens when you step out of line with the Democrat Party. When you've pledged your allegiance to the Democrat Party and you step out of line, you get spanked. Now, this first example I'm going to show you, then we're going to lead right into P. Diddy. But I'm going to give you two quick examples to show you, to validate what it is that I'm saying. I'm going to bring up the point, and then I'm going to validate it with fact. The first case in point we got is Mayor Eric Adams. Now, I'm going to let this first video clip play, and then we're going to come back and explain what's going on as we roll into the repercussions of what you're about to hear. So check this out.
Eventually, this was going to come to a neighborhood near you. Having someone embedded is a good start. That came from the Secretary of Homeland Security. We want to thank him. But I've been very clear on what we need. We need to control the border. We need to call a state of emergency, and we need to properly fund this national crisis.
So right there, we got New York Mayor Eric Adams, who at one point would say, hey, we're a sanctuary city. Bring them on in. We love everybody. New York wants them. We New York, baby. We taking them all. Bring them all in. Rah, rah, woo, woo. Now, this right here, this press conference that he did, this right here was in early 2023. At this point in time, New York was being overran with illegal migrants. Crime was happening. People were being unalived. And remember what YouTube does for certain words. So I'm saying unalived. Or people's lives were being taken, and it was just crazy around there. And finally, he got fed up, and he decided to make a public statement. Well, once Mayor Eric Adams did that, what happened to Mayor Eric Adams? Well, let's talk about it. Right after that, Mayor Eric Adams, and as this post says, Eric Adams blasted Biden on illegal immigration. Shortly thereafter, his campaign staffers' homes were raided by the FBI, and they confiscated his phones. Now he's being accused of assault for over 30 years ago. And as you see, in November of 2023, the FBI, the Biden Department of Justice, raids his offices and his staffers' offices, raids his homes. Now let's listen to Mayor Eric Adams as he explains to us what was happening, and then I'm gonna roll into the next example. Then we're gonna right into P. Diddy. Check this out.
My fellow New Yorkers, it is now my belief that the federal government intends to charge me with crimes. If so, these charges will be entirely false, based on lies. But they would not be surprising. I always knew that if I stood my ground for all of you, that I would be a target, and a target I became. For months, leaks and rumors have been aimed at me in an attempt to undermine my credibility and paint me as guilty. Just this past week, they searched the home of our new police commissioner, looking for documents from 20 years ago, just 1 week after he joined my administration. Enough. I will fight these injustices with every ounce of my strength and my spirit.
So New York Mayor Eric Adams, who was just pardoned by Trump right after he came out publicly blasting the Biden administration, how illegal immigration was tearing up New York, you know, he mysteriously gets raided and gets charges brought up on accusations from 30 years ago. And then a person who joined his staff just the previous week had a witch hunt looking for documents from 20 years previous. So that's one example. So he was all good when he was, hey, Team Biden, but Team Democrats. But the moment he stepped out of line, he got spanked. Well, let's roll on to this next one. The next example is Senator Bob Menendez. Senator Bob Menendez, if you don't know, has been sentenced to 11 years in prison for bribery and on corruption. It is alleged, and you know he was convicted of it, of them finding gold bars in his home and taking $500,000, finding $500,000 in cash, gold bars, Range Rovers, and gifts from the Egyptian government. Now, Senator Menendez was the chairman of the Council on Foreign Relations, which is one of the most prestigious committees. If you're enjoying this video, do me a solid, hit the thumbs up, because I'll never ask you for a Cash App or a Super Chat, but you hitting that like button, it really helps the channel, helps get the information out. And if you aren't subscribed to the channel, subscribe. And then once you do, make sure you hit the notification bell and select all. That way, you'll be notified when I upload new videos. In government, he was the chairman of this committee and was just busted in a corruption case. He and his wife accepting gold bars from Egypt, and he had $500,000 in cash at his house, cars, trips, all of the good stuff. Now, you may say, well, Brian, he was corrupt. He needed to get busted. Now, do you believe that as the chairman of the committee, and as long as he had been in the Senate and in the House, we're talking about 30 years with this man, you think he was the only one? As a matter of fact, in his public address, he said that what he was being sentenced for, every single member of the Senate is also guilty of being a foreign agent if he got convicted of being a foreign agent and accepting gifts. So let's get into how Mr. Menendez got into this case in the first place. Now, right here, this is where in 2021 or 2023, excuse me, after the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, Tony Blinken, the Secretary of Defense, was testifying before the Senate. And let's see what Bob Menendez says and does to him.
Let me turn to the focus of today's hearing. Mr. Secretary, the execution of the U.S. withdrawal was clearly and fatally flawed. This committee expects to receive a full explanation of the administration's decisions on Afghanistan since coming into office last January. There has to be accountability.
Now, Bob Menendez was hard on him publicly and the Biden administration for the Afghanistan withdrawal. He also was totally against the Iran deal, where the Biden administration gave Iran $6 billion in exchange for some hostages. Bob Menendez was publicly thrashing the Biden administration, was thrashing them for Afghanistan, was not on board with the deals, and was at risk of costing them a deal that was coming up in the Middle East in months to come. And guess what happened to Bob Menendez? He gets brought up on charges. As a matter of fact, listen to this. Listen to this story as this gentleman, listen to this report as this gentleman breaks it down and goes more in depth about what happened with Bob Menendez.
But do you really think that Bob Menendez is the only corrupt politician in Washington right now? No. There's a reason they're targeting Bob Menendez right now. There's a reason they're going after him, and I'll tell you why. It's because Bob Menendez has been a thorn in the side of the Democrats when it comes to their Iran policy for years. Bob Menendez recently spoke out against the $6 billion deal that Joe Biden conducted with Iran to get the hostages back. Bob Menendez also was against the Iran deal in the first iteration under Barack Obama. That's why, guess who is out there ringing the bell on all of this right now? Ben Rhodes. Oh, Ben Rhodes. And it's interesting that right when Menendez was against the first Iran deal, that's when his first corruption charges came up. Do you get how it works, folks? This regime that we're living under, they've decided that when someone becomes too much of a problem for them, regardless of the issue, Bob Menendez is still liberal, don't get me wrong, still liberal, probably did all that stuff. But do you really think he's the only one in D.C. who's doing it?
So Bob Menendez, been there in the Senate, chairing some of the top committees, friends with all of these men, but yet he's the only person that gets brought up. So we saw an example of Mayor Eric Adams, who is a Democrat, who is a progressive, who was pro-sanctuary city. The moment he stepped out of line, he got raided, investigated. They were trying to catch him up, but he was clean. Bob Menendez stepping out of line with Iran, spoke out against Afghanistan. Guess what? They went after him. They got him. Now it brings us back to Diddy. And you may say, well, how does this tie into P. Diddy? The way that this ties into P. Diddy, I'm going to let you listen. And you listen to what Puffy said that he's been doing. This man has been operating underneath the shadows for years. You think these people didn't know? It's coming out in court. Everybody was there. Things that he did were not in private. This man had people around him all the time. Other celebrities would be there. Politicians would be there. Assistants, stylists. He did not care. It went down wherever he was at. And everybody turned a blind eye. But now, all of a sudden, with such veracity, the long arm of the law came hammering down. And this wasn't the Trump DOJ. This was the Biden DOJ that went after Sean Puffy Combs, and Homeland Security that went after Sean Puffy Combs. So let's get into this. You listen and you tell me if you can hear how this man, and rightfully so, because he's a wretched snake for the crap that he did. And he's not the only one. And you know the names of the other creeps. And there's plenty more. He's not last. They're still doing it. They're just going to hide it better. But you listen to what he says, and you'll understand why the long arm of the law and the Biden Department of Justice put the hammer down, and they plan to not only lock him up. Do you know that if he loses his case, the government is taking all of his assets? And that's the Biden Department of Justice that started this case. That's there in New York in that 2nd district where they do not play around. The same district where they got Bob Menendez. Guess what? The same district where Eric Adams. You're starting to see a trend here with that New York 2nd district. And when you step out of line with the Democrats, what happens? Now listen to Sean Puffy Combs and you'll understand, or you'll have an overstanding of why they brought the hammer down. This is going to blow your mind. Check this out.
I'm an independent, first of all. When I vote, I try to do what's best for my community.
Let's be clear on that. You're not standing behind your decision to hold your vote anymore. You want people to go out there and vote.
It would be irresponsible of me to have us hold our vote hostage. Mm-hmm. But it would also be irresponsible of me to just let this moment go by. The world is watching, and not do everything I can to make sure that going forth that we're a part of the narrative, mm-hmm. that we own our politics. And so I'm launching one of the boldest movements that I've ever launched. And it's called Our Black Party.
Okay.
It's time for us to have our own Black political party, unapologetically. Because right now, if you look at the debates, we're not even a part of the conversation.
Not at all.
We're not a part of the conversation. We don't have any political power. We don't have any political leverage. And so we started Our Black Party with some young, fearless Black activists, elected officials, and I've stepped up and put the money behind it. Mm-hmm. This is the biggest threat and the only option that we have right now as far as making a change, taking our own self-responsibility and accountability to be educated and empowered with our vote.
So what's the goal for Our Black Party?
Our Black Party's number one goal is to unify behind a Black agenda. Mm-hmm. That's it. Mm-hmm. You could be a part of the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, you could be an independent, but if you're Black, you wasn't born Republican, you wasn't born Democrat, you wasn't born independent, you was born Black. Mm-hmm. And we have to seize our political power, because it'll just be more of the same, being pushed this way, being pushed that way, and we expecting a different result. Mm-hmm. But the definition of insanity is like doing the same thing over and over the same way, expecting a different result, and it's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. So we have to change the tone. We got to start with us stepping up and really taking the responsibility and accountability to be a part of this political movement.
The hardest part of that is going to be getting other Black people to buy into it.
This is not for all Black people. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? This is not for the scary ones. Mm-hmm. This is for the ones that want to move things forward and want to get to the smoke. A Black person spends an average of like 5 hours on Instagram a day. Mm-hmm. If you could give Instagram that time, mm-hmm. 15 minutes you could give to educating yourself. Mm-hmm. And Our Black Party's that platform. So when we get down to the local elections, when we get down to the school board, we get down to the judges and the justices, that's so confusing for us. Mm-hmm. We've never played this game. This is another level of gangster. Mm-hmm. But I played this game before, you know? I started in 2004 with Vote or Die, and this is the evolution of that thought, of that empowerment, of that independence, of us taking self-accountability, so we're not caught with our pants down like this election. Right?
And see, now, if you heard what he said, he talked about starting a party and whatnot now, and he's going to get into saying something else that really put the hammer down. And truth, what he's saying is he's correct on what he's saying as far with local elections and getting people more intelligent. But I will tell you, it's extremely disheartening, though, to listen to him talk like this, knowing all of the stuff that he really does in his private life. It sounds good. And they say Puffy is the master of deception. His public persona, phenomenal. That's why it was so hard for so many people to believe this. So to hear him speak, knowing what he does to women, knowing how he abuses people, knowing how he manipulates people, how he takes advantage of people, how he robs people. Man, the message was good, but the messenger makes you want to break him in half. But check it out. He's going to say something else.
Right now, we're not going to get nothing. We caught with our pants down. We're not organized. We're not ready to really take this on.
Caught with our pants down from him after what's going on. That didn't age very well, did it?
Let me ask you, what's the difference between Vote or Die Diddy and Hold Your Vote Diddy? And what occurred between those two phases that made the change happen?
I went through the experience of politics. I played the game with the Democratic Party. The people that I went and campaigned for, after they got elected, I don't feel like they really did anything to change the reality of Black people. I was blessed enough to find God come to me and tell me my purpose. And he told me my purpose is to play a part in saving the Black race. The vote.
Now, when you learn what he worships and what he's into, man, the God that he's talking about is not the God that I believe in, the God of love and the God that created the universe, the sun and the stars. And this isn't allegedly either. It's well known now that Sean Puffy Combs practices dark magic, follows Aleister Crowley. So when you hear him making references to God, it's not the same God that if you're a Christian that you believe in and that you serve, the God of Abraham. It's not that God. They believe in Cain, like they worship Cain and whatnot. It's really weird what they're into. And the girl, Cassie, she testified to this.
What it died Diddy was about politics and, trying to be supportive. And also, they kind of guilt us in the votings, But as I evolved, I realized this is a business. This is a transaction. This is the closest thing to the streets than the streets that I've seen.
That's why I don't think there's nothing wrong with asking these politicians for something for your vote.
Yeah, you can't keep on giving your power away for free. This is Black insanity. We keep on doing the same thing over and over, the same way, expecting a different result. Now we in a trick bag, as my mother would say. You know what I'm saying?
Explain that.
That's old Harlem hustler lingo, is when you're in a situation you're like in a catch-22 between COVID hitting us and because we weren't organized for this election, we have no choice now to get Trump out of there. It's a shame and it's our responsibility that we did not get anything out of putting Biden in the place he's in after the primaries.
They gave us Senator Harris as the VP. I mean, those are some of the things we were asking for. Black agenda could be way stronger, way stronger. He said he put a Black woman on the Supreme Court. We don't even know if that's gonna happen now.
Hey, when you look at it, we don't have no choice. You know what I'm saying? You can say what you want about Biden. I can't say I love the pick either, but hey, we got to get him in office and then we got to hold him accountable.
So how do we do that? In addition to voting, what else is Sean Combs going to do?
From Trayvon Martin, I've been trying to figure out like how can we end this? Trying to think about solutions, because you could be angry and you could march, you could protest, and people could hear you, but that don't mean that they're making any changes. So for me, it was us looking within ourselves and saying, let's not wait for these people to come and save us. Let's not wait for the Democratic Party. Let's not wait for government. Let's own our politics. Black politics. We need to own that. We need to have a platform, an institution that's going to support and breed young Black politicians and social leaders that have integrity, not just in the quiet rooms, publicly.
One question about race in the...
I wanted to bring that to you. So there you have it. As you heard, Sean Combs you know, what he was saying makes sense. But knowing who this man is, as it's been pouring out, besides the stories that I've heard, and I've been hearing stories about Puff since way back in the late 90s. And now to hear them all get laid out in court as truths is mind-blowing. Some of the most wretched, despicable stuff you could think of. Things you wouldn't do to a woman that you hated, let alone someone that you supposedly dated. But yet he did it. Not one time, not two times. We're talking about hundreds of times. And so to hear him speak, yes, I agree. The black community does need to become more educated politically. I agree. The country as a whole needs to embrace midterm elections, our mayor races, our city council, our state senators, state congressional members, those things, the judges, the sheriffs. People do, not just black people, people as a whole. It's more so classism than it is racism. You know, so classes of people at the lower economic line need to become more politically educated to help vote people in to make their economic lives better. But if they don't know, they don't show. And so those with the know-how make sure they turn out to get the people that's going to be more favorable to them. That's all it is. But did you hear what he spoke about Biden and the Democrats and how he supported them, but it was over that? Now it's time to hold their feet to the fire and hold people accountable. And you were talking about the president of the United States. You got a little bit too big for your britches, Sean. If they thought that him going after Diageo, calling Diageo was a racist company was something, oh my God, you attacked the Democrats and then you attacked their leader and Joe Biden. And then you didn't just, you know, go crazy when Charlemagne said Kamala Harris's name. Even he know she wasn't qualified. He sat there silent after Charlemagne said that. Where do we got Kamala Harris? You know, black agenda. What do you mean black agenda? This is what I don't get by the so-called black activists. If we're always called the quote unquote minority and people say the number between 13 and 15%, that means that even if every single black person in the country voted, the majority could still swing an election. Period. So we act like just, you know, the black vote, we just gonna dictate something. No, we have to learn how to work with other groups, lobby on common ground, and then in numbers there's power, then see about getting things done. The other groups that get things done have either larger numbers or stronger economic power. Asians bind together, stronger economic power because they don't have the numbers. The Jewish community, stronger economically, they don't have the numbers. The white community has the numbers, but also has the economics. The black community has the economics, but does not have the unity. So that's just things to work on. But this is why I believe Sean Diddy Combs has really been attacked by the Democrat Party. It has nothing to do with those lawsuits. Matter of fact, he probably would have still been getting away with what he's been getting away with all of this time. It's not the first time he's come up on their radar. But these charges came down after this interview. This interview was done in 2021 going into 2022. Charges and whispers and Jimmy Fallon calling him out on television. All this stuff started happening around 2022, 2023. And then in 2024, the hammer totally dropped and he was arrested. But 2023 is when all types of stuff 2022, it all started happening right after this. He was on Jimmy Fallon's show. And Jimmy Fallon called him out for something with him and J-Lo and Jada Pinkett and Will Smith. And Puff looked at him like he wanted to leap across the desk and punch him in the face. If you go look it up, Puffy's wearing a yellow jacket. And it's the Puffy interview with Jimmy Fallon. Is it Jimmy Fallon? Yeah, I think not. Is that the guy? Yeah, Jimmy Fallon. It was wild. But tell me what you think in the comments. Do you think this is what motivated him to go after Sean Puffy Combs? And how do you feel about what he was saying? Do you agree with it? As far as take black out of it and just people in general. What he was saying was good, but the monster that he is saying it just taints it. You know, they say, don't hate the messenger. I mean, don't forget, ignore the messenger, but take in the message. That's what I'm asking people to do on this. Ignore the messenger. What he was saying was right, but whether he actually believes in any of that stuff, probably not. The darkness or the black empowerment that he's talking about, I don't believe has anything to do with skin tone at all. I think it's all about darkness of the soul. That's the black party that he's talking about, not the black people. The black party for those with dark spirits and dark souls. But that's just my 2 cents. But hey, if you hung in there with me up to this point, I really do appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure that you hit that like button if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. And most importantly, I want you to stay safe and you be great. I'm Brian Maxwell saying I look forward to seeing you at the top. Over and out, y'all.